West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Yesterday on the show, we spoke with the superintendent of Alachua County Public Schools, Dr. Carly Simon. She is pushing back against Governor DeSantis' ban on mask mandates in schools, despite his threat to withhold money from her district.
Any form of threatening to cut our funding is a concern. But I think that, really when I reflect on the job I need to do, then this is just something that I'm going to have to push forward. I need to provide the secure, safe school environment that's constitutionally mandated to my students. And I believe that I need to just focus on my job and make sure that I'm providing that opportunity for the students. And I believe I am with the mask mandate.
In our interview, Dr. Simon told us about a letter she received from the State Commissioner of Education, Richard Corcoran, where he pressured her to follow the governor's order and to respond by 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. And Dr. Carly Simon is back with us this morning with her response. Dr. Simon, good morning. It's great to have you on. I want to read for our audience part of your response, what you wrote to the commissioner. Quote, "The failure to use all of the mitigation strategies available, including masks, will inevitably mean that some of our students will have to receive their education outside of the school setting. We share the governor's view that this is not the desired outcome. The death or serious illness of a child as a result of COVID-19 exposure is a far more serious injury than any discomfort that may be experienced due to universal masking." Dr. Simon goes on, "We ask that you seriously consider the appropriateness of withholding funds in an amount equal to the superintendent's salary and the combined salaries of the members of the school board. Like you, we are obligated to provide a safe and secure public education to all students. Universally masking is the most effective strategy we currently have besides vaccination to meet this obligation." So, Dr. Simon, when we talked to you yesterday, you were trying to get ready for the first day of school and check on all your kids and your teachers and get another difficult school year underway, but then you had to deal with this. Tell us a little bit about what went into this letter and what weighed on you as you wrote it.
Well, so we've been, examining the letter as far as what the argument the Commissioner of Education had, and then we compared it to how we see it in our situation, especially associated with our data. And today or yesterday was the first day. And so we did get to kind of see in action what we were concerned about occurring. Just as an example, our largest high school, the entire football team, minus students who have been vaccinated, will be quarantined. My staff attorney has allowed me to share that she was not feeling well, and she actually went home ill, and she actually is vaccinated. And so, we've been predicting that this is going to have an enormous impact on how we perform our function as a school district. And so those are just two examples of how this Delta variant is really impacting everything. And these are anecdotal. It just started. I did find out that we had a parent who tested positive who dropped off their children to school. So even the component of parents making the decisions, this is under the assumption that parents are making decisions that are considerate of the public health. And I'm not seeing that across the board.
So you had a mask mandate in for the first couple of weeks of school. Kids show up at your schools in your district yesterday. How many of them would you say were wearing masks? And what did you have to say to some who weren't?
So as far as entering in the building, all of them needed to be masked. We're still trying to find out, if we had any concerns that, happened throughout the day, because obviously it's a long day and, things can occur. So we're still looking into that and examining it. We did have parents who came at the front door who wanted their children to enter and did not want to follow our mandate. And we ended up having 25 submit the medical opt-out form. We also had 5 people who acted or asked to participate in the Hope Scholarship Program. We did have a situation where one child was dropped off without a mask and the parent did not answer the phone, and that child waited in the clinic. And, we are not going to allow a situation where somebody who disagrees with our policies is allowed to do whatever they would please.
Yeah, Doctor, let me ask you, how many vaccines do children need to have to start public school in your county?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. If I were to just, remember as a parent signing my children up for school, I'd say there was quite a few of them. And then, of course, you have them throughout their childhood. And that is just always a thing. And then we also encourage flu shots every single year at our school district. So, and that's a program, a lot of participation.
It's interesting. I think, I remember 5 or 6. I have 4 kids, and they all got 5 or 6 vaccines. It's interesting. You and I are of an age. I'm about 80 years older than you, I'm sure, where we were also required to get vaccines, or else we couldn't go to school. Do you find it bizarre that you're having to explain to human beings that have lived over the past 40, 50, 60 years, the purpose of vaccinations, the purpose of why we vaccinate our children, or why we protect our children, even if, let's say, polio, for instance. My kids all got polio shots. Well, you did. Your kids did. Everybody's kids got polio shots. They had hardly any chance of getting polio. But the desire of the government was to eradicate polio from the face of the earth. This is something that we have known for 50, 60 years, and yet these people coming to you, they act as if this is the first vaccine that's ever been administered. I'm curious, how do you respond to that? How do you react to parents who act so shocked that either their kids, if they're of a certain age, need a vaccination or need to wear masks to prevent this disease from spreading?
Well, so I share that same observation in the sense where, both my parents have the scar on their arm where they did, what was that? Smallpox vaccine? I'm not even sure polio, which one it was.
Yeah.
The big round mark. And, it's funny because I remember as a kid talking to them about it, and it was a mark of pride that they were members of their community. This is what they did to eradicate this disease within the community. And so I remember those types of stories. And as a parent myself, I have vaccinated my children because I think there's that collective component as well as protecting your child. Right now, I do find it very hard to understand the resistance. I can understand, some people are resistant to change and new, and I get that. But I feel strongly that, we only function well in my mind if we all are collective and we work together. Community matters to me, and this seems to me to be just a foundational act of being a member of a community. everything is bigger than us and more than us. And I don't understand why we can't find common ground that protecting life is actually something that we all should be doing.
So, Dr. Simon, as I read through your letter, one part jumped out at me because it was so specific. You said you asked to the commissioner that you seriously consider the appropriateness of withholding funds in an amount equal to the superintendent's salary and the combined salaries of the members of the school board. Is that what the state is threatening you with? If you put this mask mandate in, which you've done now officially, we're going to take away your salary? Is that what they told you?
Well, that's what they've shared on the news. I mean, it's interesting because they don't control how funding is allocated to our employees. Like, for example, our organization, our district, we are the ones who distribute paychecks and bonuses and all of those components. So actually saying that they are not going to pay me or the board members, that's really not quite an accurate statement. They are taking that funding out of our general fund. They're removing that allocation from monies that would come to the district in order for us to provide the education to our students. So I guess he can think it's through that way in his mind, but it's actually not that way in the reality of how the monies come into the district and how they're distributed out.
So the state says, we might take your money away. You say, I'm keeping the masks on. What gives here? Might you have to work for free this year?
I am going to run this school district and take care of my families and the community and the students and my teachers and my staff members. And if that is what it's going to take, that's what it's going to take. I'm not going to let some component like this, a material thing, stop us from doing the right thing.
It is Wednesday, the 11th of August of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Or maybe some white evangelical ministers meddling where they should not be meddling? Okay, well, we'll never be able to convince them that they shouldn't be meddling where they shouldn't be meddling, because they think they should be meddling in everything. That's why they're white evangelical ministers. The gall that they have. Well, it's all a grift. Some people just passively pass around the hat or the basket. Here, would you like to tithe a little bit? Now, tithing means 10% of your income, hence the tithe. And others expect you to pay more than just a tithe. And they don't bother passing the hat around. They'll just take it directly out of your bank. Sign here. Yeah. Okay, well, we don't do that on our side. At least the good parts of us, because there is still Sean King. Ka-ching King. Yeah, apparently he's had to, he's trying to get out of Dodge. He and his wife purchased a fairly nice house for under $900,000 in New Jersey, and it seems a bit untoward. So there's been some speculation. How could Sean King get a mortgage? How could he get a loan on something a little less than $900,000 to purchase this property? Well, it wasn't his money. Well, let's put it this way. The money was funneled to his wife, and the property was purchased in his wife's name. She had a totally separate account. They file their taxes separately, and who wouldn't? I mean, that guy's getting audited a lot because he's a grifter cheat. So I wonder if his wife should be punished, because apparently her credit was good enough to be able to purchase this house and get a loan. It may have been that income was padded in some fashion coming from Sean King's grift. Anyway, a lot of people were upset because, he places himself as a kind of middleman to collect GoFundMe funds or donations to any number of family members whose family member has been killed by the police. He places himself in that position. Nobody asked him. He just shows up, says, "Hey, I'll take care of your donation page for you. Trust me." And they do. And he steals their money every single time. And a bunch of people were fairly upset that he was living in such, seemingly expensive digs when that money should have gone to the victim's family. That's what we thought, too. Everything is for sale, is what I've heard from business types. Don't love anything because everything is for sale. That's why I always delineated between owning a house and owning a home. A home is priceless. Somebody could come up and offer you just an exorbitantly large amount of money. Millions and millions and millions. But it's still not enough. It's a home. A house, just by its definition, doesn't have the same emotional connotation as a home does. So a house is something that can be sold, flipped. I always love that term. We're going to flip this. Oh, wow. So I guess what old Sean King is trying to say now is that, well, you're driving us from our home. Yeah, I guess. I still have this strange feeling that in that fellow's mindset, it wasn't a home, but it was a house in which hopefully property values would increase and they'd be able to sell in a few years after capital gains have been appeased for a nice, tidy profit. Move to a bigger house. They had a pretty big house already, but yeah, I know they got kids. They have extended family, in-laws, mom and dad, whatever. So, I like to say that we, on our side, are not capable of the grift that the repugs seem to be militarizing. But we have our own grifters, and let's not forget it, okay? But I will still argue that anecdotally, for me, I just can't bring myself to do it. Parting people with their money has always been the most difficult thing to do. I guess I'm a terrible businessman. Well, let's put it this way. Parting people from their money outside of fair value. I have no problem getting paid fair value. But taking more, I have this thing against that. That's why I always hated bartering. A lot of people just love to go in and haggle. That's more the term. Whatever is the retail price is always negotiable. Now, for me, it's like, tell me what you want for it. I'll pay you. I don't want to have to stand here and talk you down. If you're willing to sell the thing for $30 and you have it listed for $45, I don't want to go through that whole thing. My time is precious. Other people are not complete as human beings unless they can, talk down the retail price, no matter where you are. I just always hated that. Tell me what you want, I will give it to you. Don't tell me what you want with the expectation that I'm going to haggle with you and talk you down. I guess that's why I'm a terrible businessman then. Hey. Terrible meaning that I don't live in, the big digs like a Sean King. Or how about my maggot brother? Yeah, well, that's why I always said that their economic anxiety was always a racial component. They just didn't like the idea that brown and black people might be able to make money like them, because then they have to make even more, which they don't have a problem doing. But that whole value system is predicated upon material gain rather than civic duty. The Romans' domiciles tended to be rather austere because they spent most of their time in the plaza. So it's odd to me when I see these giant, what do they used to call them? McMansions. Yeah, my maggot bro had a few of those. Still does. But where they live in a gated community, closed off from the rest. And then in the process, they expect the public square, the plaza, to deteriorate. Because they don't use it. They don't want to. They don't want to be rubbing elbows with the hoi polloi. So yeah, economic anxiety. Yeah, they had a lot of economic anxiety, not because they lacked material things. They had economic anxiety because somebody else might be making something, and they got to dip their beak. The idea of rights means that they lose something. You give rights to a group of people, that means that they, in their heart, really believe that they have lost something. When we use the metaphor of, all boats rise, they think that they're being held down and sinking when somebody else floats to their level. Because it's not somebody else floating to their level. It's them being brought down to the hoi polloi. We can't have that. We need a gap. We need to get back to urban planning where we don't have fences and walls in front of our house, but open yards to the street. Hi, neighbor. This idea of gated community goes back to the warlords in Europe, where towns had to build big old walls and you needed a warlord to protect you. Well, let's put it this way. They came and said, you need some protection and you will pay. And if you didn't want the protection and you didn't want to pay, too bad. They were there and they were going to make sure you did what they wanted you to do. Walls were built and petty grievances were appeased, usually with a loss of a lot of life. And in a representative democracy, we determined not to go that route. Initially, our urban planning was open. Or even suburban planning, rural planning, the town. People didn't build walls in front of their houses and build them around their houses. They opened up to society because everybody was in it for the community. A civic duty was readily embraced. It wasn't even considered a duty. Duty being a negative connotation. Some of us don't even put negative connotation to duty. But then when you have a group of people numbering about 70 some odd million who thinks that anything that they have to do that they don't want to do at that particular time is negative. Save the kids? Sheesh. All right. It's all about the kids. And they don't give one whit about the kids. That's why we're experiencing what we are experiencing right now. The knuckle draggers have taken over, and somehow we're letting them. I say no more. No more. Okay, enough of that rant. We do have a curated show for you, like we do every day. So what's on the rest of the menu? Well, at the top, that was a school official at the Alachua, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Public School District in Florida, responded to DeSantis' threat to cut their salary if they even think of trying to protect the kids during a deadly pandemic. Yeah, don't even think about it. We'll cut your pay. On the rest of the menu, Facebook banned the Russian firm behind the Pfizer-AstraZeneca smear campaign. People would laugh at us when we'd say, you're being brainwashed by Russia. Oh, it's always about Russia. Yeah, well, they got a big hand in it, and they keep getting caught. You might as well wake up to the fact that you're being used. A Missouri judge ruled that Republican Governor Mike Parson no longer can deny Medicaid health care to thousands more newly eligible adults. And local police across the nation emboldened the militant Trump insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. We just had another blow up in Portland, and there was not a cop to be seen in broad daylight. Well, these Nazi brown shirts descended upon Portland, Oregon, and started beating the crap out of people again. Not a cop to be seen. Oh, and they were going there for to give support to a Christian group at a park, anti-LGBTQ religious group. Yeah, that religious group came to town with body armor and baseball bats, and guess what? No permit from the city. Not a cop to be seen. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where wildfires ripped through Algeria, killing 42 people, including 25 soldiers sent there to fight those fires. And Mexican President Obrador vowed to protect a prominent journalist after a powerful drug cartel threatened to kill her. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the link to that chat room, and that chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room, across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it would really help us out a lot. Bills keep going up. They never go down. Our internet service provider just hit us with another bill increase. How often do they get to do this? I guess when demand goes up, they get to charge more, apparently. And they will. They're even offering to throttle us. I thought it was a threat, but they're presenting it as an offer. Pay this increased amount or we'll throttle you. I feel embarrassed saying it, but yeah, we need help. And your help could come in the form of the cost or the equivalent of what you might pay for an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance. And if you could send those funds our way, we will stretch those dollars beyond compare, and we have quite a bit of experience doing so, over 10 years now. And then we pay our bills. We then fly under the radar. You can get away with a lot when you pay your bills. When you don't usually get away with so much. But we pay our bills, and we thank you for helping us do so, because then when we fly under the radar, we can continue this little powerhouse of resistance against the hostile takeover of the United States of America. And we thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. You just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. And thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter @Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. If you happen to be there, you can find it right there. If not, I link it up on social media platforms like Twitter and others that you know all about. And the show notes and links are a very, very important part to the show because that's where the real reportage is. The real reportage. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please, 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 please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Okay. Oh, yeah. We'll get to the weather, but it's going to be a really hot one today again. We're going to be bumping like record stuff. And this time what makes it worse than the last time that we had 110-degree weather is that this time we are choked with wildfire smoke. Okay, so it goes. Let's tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Save some room, because we do have the amuse-bouche, a couple of them at the chef's table, later on in the show. Actually, towards the end. David Klepper from the Associated Press brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Facebook said that it has removed hundreds of accounts linked to a mysterious advertising agency operating out of Russia that sought to pay social media influencers to smear COVID-19 vaccines made by Pfizer and AstraZeneca. I guess they wanted to push their Sputnik vaccine. Maybe that's why. A network of 65 Facebook accounts and 243 Instagram accounts was traced back to Fazzy, an advertising and marketing firm working in Russia on behalf of an unknown client. Really, Vlad? The network used fake accounts to spread misleading claims that disparage the safety of the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines. One claimed AstraZeneca's shot would turn a person into a chimpanzee. The fake accounts targeted audiences in India, Latin America, and to a lesser extent the U.S., using several social media platforms including Facebook and Instagram. Russia has been actively marketing its COVID-19 vaccine, Sputnik 5 or V, abroad in what source or some analysts see as an effort to score geopolitical points. But Facebook representatives did not speculate on the possible motivation behind the smear campaign. The Fozzy network also contacted social media influencers in several countries with offers to pay them for reposting the misleading content. That ploy backfired when influencers in Germany and France exposed the network's offer. Along with removing the network's accounts, Facebook also banned Fazzy from its platforms. Messages seeking comment from the company were not immediately returned yesterday, Tuesday, because I would think the Cyrillic translator is a little behind. Just saying. Fozzy's effort did not get much traction online, with some posts failing to get even a single response. But while the campaign may have fizzled, it's noteworthy because of its effort to enlist social media influencers, according to Nathaniel Gleicher, Facebook's head of security policy. Although it was sloppy, it didn't have very good reach. It was an elaborate setup, Gleicher said in a conference call announcing Facebook's actions. As social media companies have improved their ability to spot and remove fake accounts, disinformation campaigns have had to adjust. Paying social media influencers to repost their content provides the potential of exposure to the influencer's audience. But there's the risk that social media influencers will refuse, or as happened in this case, call them out. Curious how nobody in America who was contacted called them out. Facebook investigators say some influencers did post the material, but later deleted it when stories about Fozzie's work began to emerge. When the offer from Fazzi urged influencers not to mention that they were being paid, and also suggested they criticize the media's reporting on vaccines. Just too many red flags, an influencer told the AP. I just decided not to do it. Summer Valentine of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Missouri judge ruled that Republican Governor Mike Parson no longer can deny Medicaid health care to thousands more newly eligible adults. Cole County Judge John Beadham, in his order, said Parson's administration must give Medicaid coverage to newly eligible adults despite the governor's resistance to doing so. Beadham also ordered the newly eligible adults won't face any additional restrictions to get health care coverage through the program. The ruling represents a major victory for supporters of expanding Medicaid under the terms of the 2010 federal health care law, signed by President Barack Obama. Missouri voters last year approved a state constitutional amendment expanding access to the government health care program to an estimated 275,000 more low-income adults. But Parson had refused to implement it because the GOP-led legislature did not set aside money for it. In other words, they like to nullify whatever a Democrat does. With today's court order, Medicaid eligibility is finally expanded in Missouri, as is voters mandated and its people deserve, Democratic House Minority Leader Crystal Quaid said in a statement. There can be no more excuses and no more delays in implementation. 3 women who were newly eligible for Medicaid sued to force Parsons' administration to give them health care access. They were vindicated last month when the Missouri Supreme Court found the voter-approved Medicaid expansion program constitutional and told the lower court to rule in their favor. It remains unclear how the state will pay for health care for the newly eligible recipients. The legislature may have to hold a special session to set aside more money for Medicaid. Otherwise, the state risks running out of funding for the program. We will continue to work with the Department of Social Services and the General Assembly to chart a path forward to enroll the expanded population and keep the Missouri Health Net program solvent, a spokesman said. Travis Geddes of Raw Story brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The violent assault on the U.S. Capitol on January 6 had been widely predicted by those who monitor the far right and echoed street brawls that have erupted in Portland and other cities across the country. The Proud Boys and other right-wing militants have clashed with Antifa activists and Black Lives Matter protesters in Portland for several years at least, although this summer had been largely peaceful until this past weekend. And local activists blame the police for creating a space for outside agitators to operate. Portland itself is seen as a soft target, I think, by the far right, because there's good activism going on here, said Juan Chavez, project director of the Oregon Justice Resource Center's Civil Rights Project, and a police force that doesn't give two shits about policing the far right. Right-wing agitators were drawn to the city last weekend by an event staged by an anti-LGBTQ pastor, and some of them, including a man who has been charged in the Capitol riot, engaged in fights and recorded themselves menacing a man standing alone. People say you can't fight Antifa, you can't fight the evil with these, said accused rioter Jeffrey Grace in a Facebook video, holding up his fists. Guess what? You can, as long as he's the lead. He pointed toward the sky. You can use these, holding up his fists. Grace, who was photographed leaving Portland in a pickup truck with several men holding bats and other weaponry, blamed the violence on leftists. But onlookers and journalists say heavily armed right-wing militants were operating in public spaces with impunity. The minor skirmishes of Saturday showed yet again that Portland police were not going to respond to these types of incidences, said civil rights activist Zakir Khan, and they were largely nowhere to be seen as these things were happening. I mean, this is happening in broad daylight, in the middle of the day in downtown Portland. Khan sees those street clashes as a direct precursor to the January 6th insurrection. Local police around the country failed the Capitol Police, Khan said. I think Capitol Police that day had no idea what was effectively coming because of poor communications between agencies, and agencies just not viewing these groups as a major threat. Police inaction in Portland and other cities only served to embolden right-wing militants, which the Justice Project director ties directly to the Capitol riot. There's this picture like it's a Renaissance painting of several figures who were later at the Capitol and who are now either in jail or being prosecuted, Chavez said. Of course they thought they could just march into the Capitol and do what they did. They learned it here. Grace, the accused rioter who returned to fight in Portland, made that clear in a Facebook video recorded over the weekend. These colors do not run, Grace said in the video. That's the same thing I did at the Capitol. I did nothing wrong. I proudly, peacefully protested. Yeah, peacefully. When everyone knows it's a lie, you know what? It's been proven and proven again. So you know what? I told you, I'm not going to cower. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to bow down. Nope. So I will be back. Well, you know what? I think we need to round up these Nazis and throw them in jail. What do you say? Well, what do you say we go to our break? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed, and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart, Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Richard Trumka, who like his father and grandfather before him, began his working career in the coal mines of Pennsylvania and later became the president of the AFL-CIO, has died.
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Alternating between the mines and college, Trumka graduated Pennsylvania State University and then law school, and then worked as a staff attorney for the United Mine Workers. In 1982, at age 33, he was elected president of that union as a reformer. That was the decade when he and his colleagues founded Jobs with Justice, which brings together labor unions, community groups, faith-based and civil rights organizations to advocate and advance the rights of workers. Trumka was an organizer and a fighter. As president of the mine workers, he led a successful 9-month strike against the Pittston Coal Company in 1989 and against Peabody Coal in 1993. In 1995, he began serving as secretary-treasurer of the AFL-CIO and in 2009 was elected president. Upon the announcement of his death, New York Senator Chuck Schumer took to the floor of the Senate and said of Trumka, "The working people of America have lost a fierce warrior at a time when we needed him most." Richard Trumka, reformer, fighter for workers' rights and working families, and a champion of justice, died of a heart attack on August 5th at the age of 72. We mourn his passing. This Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because we fight together for human rights, and freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the International Longshoremen's and Warehousemen's Union was founded, after the victorious strike of 1934 that established the Union Hiring Hall. West Coast Union leaders embarked on an inland campaign to organize the thousands of warehouse workers who handled shipped goods. But West Coast dock workers overwhelmingly chose to join the CIO after it was expelled from the AFL earlier that year. They found that the ILA planned to abandon the warehouse workers they had worked so hard to organize. They also opposed dues assessments to fight the CIO and disagreed with the ILA's hostility to minimum wage laws, Social Security, and unemployment insurance. Radicals like Harry Bridges and others had established themselves not only as workers' leaders, but also led attacks on Jim Crow racism in the ranks and in the industry. The success of the 1934 strike was due in part to the welcoming of blacks into the ranks of the Union. In his book, Workers on the Waterfront, historian Bruce Nelson notes that, quote, the ILWU's well-known opposition to racial discrimination was an important factor in the Union's expansion into Hawaii, not only on the waterfront, but among sugar and pineapple plantation workers. The triumph of the ILWU in Hawaiian agriculture brought about a degree of fraternization across racial lines that few had thought possible. Since then, the Union has beat back numerous Taft-Hartley and McCarthy-era attacks. More recently, the ILWU has been in the forefront of broader social justice struggles, leading walkouts and work stoppages for various political causes. Today, it represents close to 60,000 workers, including those locals that initially refused to affiliate. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit right here at the mothership, expecting a high of around 105 to 106. Not too hot. Partly cloudy, with winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. A few passing clouds tonight with lows in the upper 60s. Winds continuing out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10. And sun with a few passing clouds tomorrow. It will be hot. Highs around 107. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to increase by scores. We now stand at 137,056, with deceased remaining at the 166 total that we reported yesterday. Grass pollen right outside the window at the mothership is moderate here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is moderate at 89 parts per million, and that's not healthy for the unhealthy. And the daytime UV index is very high at 8. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.98 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 70%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that crowdsources from around the world. London is 75 and partly cloudy. Paris is 80 degrees and sunny. Rome is 94 and fair with a heat advisory that could impact critical infrastructure like the electrical grid. Kyiv is 85 and fair. Kabul is 86 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 81 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and clear. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York has a heat advisory of their own today, as it is a sweltering 81 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Hamid Ahmed of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Forest fires in Algeria killed 42 people yesterday, Tuesday, including 25 soldiers deployed to help put out the blaze. The government said in a statement, as thick clouds of smoke covered much of the mountainous Kabylie region east of the capital. Dozens of separate fires have raged through forest areas across northern Algeria since Monday night, and the Interior Minister accused arsonists of igniting the flames without providing more details on the allegations. Only criminal hands can be behind the simultaneous outbreak of about 50 fires across several localities, he said. Well, it could also be climate change. Last week, an EU atmosphere monitor said the Mediterranean had become a wildfire hotspot as massive blazes engulfed forests in Turkey and Greece, aided by a heat wave. The soldiers were killed in different areas, some while trying to extinguish the flames, and others after they were cut off by the spreading fire, Kabylie residents said. The Defense Ministry said more soldiers had been badly injured with burns. Several houses were burnt as families were escaping to hotels, youth hostels, and university residences, witnesses said, and they added that a dense smoke hampered the visibility of fire crews.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous staff at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Mexican President Obrador vowed to protect a prominent journalist after a powerful drug cartel threatened to kill her in the latest instance of serious violence facing reporters in the country. López Obrador said a protection scheme had been set up for Azucena Uresti, best known as a television anchor at news network Milenio, and who received the threat in a video message delivered in the name of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Surrounded by masked gunmen, a mask-wearing man accused Uresti of showing bias in coverage in favor of so-called defense groups battling the gang in the state of Michoacán. López Obrador, who frequently criticizes media he views as hostile to his administration, expressed solidarity with Uresti during his regular morning news conference. I completely condemn these threats, he said, adding the gang's behavior will not be tolerated. Uresti has rejected the gang's accusations and on Twitter thanked López Obrador on behalf of all our colleagues who have been harassed, threatened, and murdered in this country. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.